So I want to pivot and talk a little bit about strength training women across kind of the transition from perimenopause into menopause. Do you have any experience with that? I'm guessing you do. And Mike, you must, just by the fact that they're coming in your... So start with you, Gabrielle. What are you noticing as the most important things as women are making the transition from perimenopause straight on into menopause?
The first thing is to don't wait until they start to feel that their body composition is changing. The fitter they are going into perimenopause and menopause, the better they're going to be, both metabolically and just activities of daily life, everything. Those women seem to suffer much less. When hormones are changing, I think what I end up seeing is that maybe sleep is poor. Their tendons, one of the signs of menopause is this frozen shoulder. So if someone is a candidate for HRT, we do certainly believe in that, or menopause therapy. When it comes to training, in the literature, I haven't seen huge evidence or a variation evidence that good training doesn't include, it's not sex specific. There is not something specific for women that needs to happen rather than following good foundational principles of strength training, hypertrophy, and cardiovascular activity.
So you don't say, hey, now that you're making this transition, we have to alter your periodization or change the amount of time you're spending doing one form of training, say cardio versus resistance, or even the number of reps you would do. We're not changing any of that stuff.
I don't. One of the things that we do look at, though, is if they are at risk for injury, for tendons or joints, because we do see that changes. But then once we treat them, I do not see a reason to change. Good programming is good programming. Progressive stimulus is progressive stimulus.
No, it was great because when I read your book, it was very reinforcing for me, because where I'm getting that question more and more now from our female clients, just because of people like you who are talking about it more, people are more comfortable than talking to us about it. And it's exactly that. It's the whole thing. I always come back. It always comes back to strength and conditioning. Right? Get stronger, get in better shape, get them to challenge themselves more with weights and not be content. The females are I always think there's an ego component that's absent in females that is very present in males. Like males will look at, if I looked at what Jeff did, I might think, oh, I'm going to try that. Females just don't have that. They're just very internally driven. And sometimes that will cause them to underachieve in the weight room because they're not worried about being top dog. They're not worried about who lifted the most weight. It just isn't.
Makes them better snipers,
I believe it. It makes them better clients. Trust me. If I could, I would do nothing. I have a lot of really elite females that are great hockey players and lacrosse players and stuff, and they're the best people to train by far because they don't have a lot of the kind of the extra baggage sometimes that the guys have. They're just way more compliant. They just listen to what you say. They don't argue with you. They're not worried about what Jeff is doing. But just encouraging them to continually get stronger and encouraging them to continue to, and we would look at it as conditioning versus cardiovascular work. That's just kind of how we always use the term, but pushing them to do more intervals, pushing them to do, I want more aggressive intervals. So, you want to call it a VO2 max workout, but I want to get that. Like, I loved Andy Galpin's idea. Like, Andy Galpin's thing was like, hey, you just want to get your heart rate up really high once a week. I think that's a really good concept. And starting to just get people to think, hey, get your heart rate up. Wear a heart rate monitor. Don't be afraid to push your heart rate to X, whatever that is. And don't be afraid to be, out of breath or get off the bike and feel like you want to lay on the floor kind of thing. Because we're big assault bike airdyne people, because it's just, I think it's the most efficient way to hit your cardiovascular system with what I would call no orthopedic costs. Like, I can kill you on the bike and nothing bad is going to happen. Even like you were saying with the hamstring, I'm going to bet going to be able to bike with that hamstring.
I'm planning on trying it later today.
And then you'll be perfectly fine because you're non-weight bearing and you're not getting a lot of aggressive hip extension and a lot of aggressive hip flexion, and you can probably torture yourself on there for a long time without having any negative effects. But the biggest thing, like I said, with women is just getting them over that I'm going to get big so I don't push myself kind of thing. And so it's funny, I film a lot of my women and ask them to talk about how much they weigh and how much weight they haven't gained. So I have two of the best lacrosse attackers on our U.S. team that are in their mid-20s now, and they've been here for 5 years and they've gained no weight. they're stronger, they're faster. But females gaining lean mass is really difficult. You have to really be a super responder. And usually I always say apples end up like apples, oranges end up like oranges. It's not like suddenly one day the apple is going to wake up and the next day going to be an orange. Like you're going to be, if you're an ectomorph, you will get the occasional really mesomorphic female where you do think, oh, wow, she really does respond to weights, but they're rare. They're super rare.
So Jeff, what about you? What are you seeing in women specifically that you're training, especially during that transition through menopause?
I think, as Gabrielle pointed out, like the training specifics are pretty much the same. What applies and what is good, smart training for men is equally applicable to women. The only thing that I would say from a PT standpoint, biomechanically, there are some differences in terms of something called the Q angle, right? The angle of the hip or the femur coming down to the knee. It does create a lot more valgus at the knee for women than it does for men. So I think you just have to be aware of those things. So when you're doing certain activities, you want to be able to coach better in terms of being aware of positioning. So like the tendency for a lot of women when they jump is to land in a much more valgus knee state, which could put more and more stress. And even if it's not, like we're not fearful of them blowing out in a training session, but as we talked about before, that cumulative stress of every time you land, you're getting more and more stress on the MCL or the ACL, that would be something that you'd want to coach around and make them aware of, because you could strengthen that. You could work on biomechanically improving those things. You know, if you put a band around their knees and have them jump that way and land that way, they're learning how to activate their abductors in their hip. That is probably something that isn't even really a requirement. All men could benefit from that, but it's not an additional requirement because we're not dealing with the same biomechanical angles. Also, because of hormones, women will have more laxity of hormones at different times of the month that will make them susceptible to different stresses. So I think you just have to be aware of the education side of it and coaching through that. But as far as the exercises, the programming, we also found that women just tend to be much stronger than men in terms of their output pound for pound, and given the differences in sex, they're able to proportionally push more weight, especially with their lower body, than men can. So
interesting.
Yeah, very strong, much stronger. Have you found that too, Mike? The women are incredibly strong in terms of their output in strength comparative to men. When you
I haven't really thought about it in terms of pound for pound. The one thing we found is that they're much stronger in their upper body than they think they are. That's the one thing that we've seen is that we've got women doing weighted chins with 45 pounds for 5. And
what?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Our best one is that 45 for 7 is the best I've seen.
45 pounds wrapped around her waist and she's doing 7 chin-ups.
Alex Carpenter, who's
how many men can do that?
In our gym, we really emphasize it, like most of ours.
Wow.
My son's did 90 for 2 the other day. He weighs 180. A bunch of kids in his team. We really push pulling. That doesn't sound right, but we emphasize pulling.
We like to push pulling.
Yes, we like it. Yeah, I'm leading the league in redundancy.
I want to come back to something you said at the outset, Mike. You were talking about kids. The youngest you train is 11. You drew a hard line in the sand. How come? I'm Peter Attia. This podcast relies exclusively on premium subscribers for support, which allows us to provide all our content without taking a single penny from advertisers. I believe this keeps my content honest, making it a trusted resource for listeners like you. As a premium member, you'll get immediate access to our entire back catalog of AMA episodes and all future AMA episodes. You'll get longevity-focused premium articles packed with actionable insights. You'll get unrivaled show notes for each and every episode of The Drive, every topic, every study, every resource from each episode carefully curated for you. You'll get quarterly podcast summaries where you'll learn my biggest personal takeaways from the previous 90 days of expert guest episodes and much more. This journey doesn't have to be navigated alone. We can take these steps towards a better, longer life together. Become a premium member today at peterattiamd.com/subscribe to join me in a shared commitment to a healthier future.